Hello, I am Toby Clark, and this is my AS Level Media Coursework evaluation. In which ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge conventions of real media products? And I am going to focus on specific areas of my magazine, because I'm doing print, and I will analyse and explain my decisions behind them. So the first point I'm going to focus on is the title of my magazine, which is Stereo Magazine. The main bit being stereo, obviously, the magazine is implied. The word stereo, it encapsulates the genre of the magazine, as well as the genre of music that the magazine focuses on, because it is a music magazine and stereo immediately implies that. But the word stereo also holds a lot more significance in the indie music genre, because vinyls and stereo vinyls, that's what it's associated with, are a much more significant part of indie music as a genre than of many other popular forms of music. So yeah, this is especially characterized by the stylized O that I've used in the logo for my magazine, because that O, that logo is an adapter that was used to change jukebox records into ordinary normal playing records. So that is where that little symbol comes from. And that's the reasoning behind the logo, essentially. The mise-en-scène of my magazine is essentially summed up in this one image, because the blurriness of the photo alongside the sepia kind of effect that I've put on it, and the duotone editing that I did in Photoshop on that photo, it really puts across the indie or lo-fi or whatever it is feel of the magazine, and in particular the article that it's going alongside. So yeah, the image on the cover is a lot more crisp and precise, but that's just because it's the front page and it feels more appropriate, whereas in the actual article I really wanted to represent the meaning that the band that the article is about supposedly holds, which is about not their appearance being the main feature of what they are, more about the music that they make. So that explains my choice in photograph. In terms of costumes, I made a concerted effort to let the models I was using wear their own clothes, because they were all the models are a part of the indie music kind of culture, so the clothes that they would wear do represent the scene, which is just it's fitting, so why would I tell them what to wear? And the props were the only prop that was used in any photos was a guitar, which is held by Alex Donnelly in one of the Lux photos, it purely to show that in the band that is his role, he is primarily a guitarist. In terms of my choice of actual models, appearance was key. Both of the models in the Lux photo shoot are actually musicians, which is fitting, but that wasn't why I picked them, because this was purely for aesthetics, because they look like they are a lo-fi or indie or whatever other genre this magazine is attempting to represent. They fit that aesthetic. That, for me, is the most important reason behind why I picked the models I picked. And it's the same with Sasha Street and Paul Holding, who are the only other two people who appear in the magazine. They fit the idea of indie music. They look like part of that scene, because they are part of that scene, and it works in my magazine. The fact that I've picked these people is important, because it means that it seems more realistic to the readers of the magazine, that like the people who would read the magazine, they can relate more with the people. Because yeah, that if people feel like they know where the musicians are coming from, they'll be more interested to read about why they do what they do and how they got there and all that sort of thing, because that's an important thing. It's immediately drawing the readers in just from like looking at pictures, and that's how I chose to draw the readers in. In my magazine, I have used only 2 fonts. So I have used a font called Caviar Dreams, which I found on Dafont, the website. That's the font that's used in the logo of the magazine and for all the titles that aren't specifically associated with the band Lux, because for those things and everything else associated with Lux, I've used the font Didot. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it is, I believe, by default on Apple computers. So I was using an Apple computer at home, so I've used that font. My reasoning behind using Caviar Dreams as a font is because it's very clean and it's sans serif, and it doesn't look too formal, and I'm trying to appeal to a younger audience with this magazine, so I felt that was appropriate. Whereas for the text that was surrounding Lux, I actually used a font that was called Theno Dido, or D-Dot, which was a free version of D-Dot, because when I was making the magazine in college, I didn't have access to the actual font, so I had to find a free version of it. It works as block text, which is important for the Lux article, because that's the only place where there is a lot of blocks of text, but it also fits the kind of almost retro or maybe vintage, not that sort of vibe that the band gives off is shown by that font. In terms of the written content of my articles, I never had an actual interview with the band, but just from my own mind, I managed to create a fairly realistic, in my opinion, seeming interview with them, like making it seem like I'd actually had a conversation with the people who I took photos of. I know them both as people, like they're both reasonably good friends, so I know the sort of things that they'd say. To make it seem more realistic in the interview, I used a lot of informal language. I also, in the text, I took a very kind of eye-catching quote that I made up from one of the people and put that in a larger font, just purely to break up the text. This is a thing that I'd seen other magazines do fairly frequently, so I adopted that idea, because it really does help to break up the text instead of being one intimidating block of text. As I've spoken about before, the genre of the magazine is music and the subgenre is indie. Yeah, like I've said, these things are represented in a few ways. So the use of images, like those blurry images of the main band that is featured in the magazine, they really show off the indie kind of feel. That scene is very, it's pretty carefree when it comes to image, hence the blurry images, and the logo, that record adapter used in the logo, that also is strongly representative of the indie music scene. The layout of my magazine is most important, I would say, in the second double page spread, because that's where the most content is, so it was important that I got the content laid out correctly. I looked at a lot of other magazines, primarily NME and Q, and looked at how they laid out their double page spreads in terms of where images were positioned and how the text was laid out, and really just tried to emulate that appearance as much as possible without stealing specific ideas. For example, NME have the initial of the artist that they're writing about in red underneath their text. I didn't steal that as an idea, but I took the way that they split the page by text and by image, half and half. I used that idea in my magazine to make it look simply just more like an actual magazine. My contents page that I created for the magazine shows 3 large images of the 3 artists or bands who are the main features of this issue of the magazine, because this was from looking at other magazines' contents pages. They often had images of the main featured artists in the contents pages and page numbers on the image. So I took these ideas and used them. I also introduced something that just came to me somehow, which was the idea of color coding the articles and having a little key. So, for example, interviews with artists have a little blue square next to them. So yeah, so at the tops of each page there's a little tab that is in that color, and it says what genre of or what type of article is on that page. I liked that idea. I think it would help readers significantly with navigating the magazine.